Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew and Friday Night Knives here. This is the CJRB Ekko, two different versions, and we're going to see not only how the knives themselves are, as it's a review as well as a comparison, but which one of the two versions is better. One of my lights burnt out, so we're going to see how this goes. I'm going to have to try and avoid the shadow over here and use the left hand more if I can. But first things first, let's check out what these are. These are the same in dimensions here. So 7.5 inches from nose to tail, 3 inches of cutting edge, and less than 3.5 inches of total edge, right around just over 3.25, maybe 3.25, depending upon how you measure. Both knives measure the same. Couple of just relative comparisons here real quick. Get the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, PM2 here, and the Para 3 Lightweight, which they are going to be much closer to in size, as you can see. Get a lot more like the PM2 blade length, but something closer and closer to the handle space of it in a size that's much closer to the Para 3. All right, those two out here. Couple more, not just any leak, but a random leak. Getting through these so quick, I forget to give them their proper intro. And it's just a blur. Very good size, really close to the leak, as you can see. Gets a lot of leak vibe from it with a bit more refinement, which, considering how old the leak design is, it's aged quite well. And it's in just the right size. And the Benchmade bug out. And the Civivi Elementum. And you can see, you start going like hand space, you get a lot of Elementum to it. Bug out, very similar as well. It's right in that sweet spot, the zone of good EDC size, below 3.5. It's not below 3, so it's not legal everywhere, but below 3.5. All that, and of course, my Wiener is just better. Couple of other things, different mechanisms, but design here. Same design. This is a Ray Laconico design. Laconico. So same design right there when it comes to it. Different mechanisms, which is where we're going to go. The aesthetics, as far as the comparison goes, the design is the same. It's a tie. For the aesthetics, not that there isn't some argument to be made that the green, the gold, and the stone-washed here is a better all-around look. Just the sheer fanciness of the button lock version, along with things like the titanium milled clip, the bolster. It's fancier. It gets the nod on the aesthetics. Well, excuse me on that one. All right, but let's get a little bit more about the mechanism here and how certain things are affected by it, because here is the button lock. 3.85 ounces. Here is the liner lock. Almost half an ounce, right? 3.45 has 3.44. Oh, yeah. Almost just over 0.4 of an ounce. There you go. So yeah, that's a significant amount. Yeah, it's a few grams. It's this and that. It's enough. It's enough that it makes it quite a bit heavier in the pocket. Noticeably so. Now it's 3.84. So 0.4 ounces. Pretty much exactly. Now I need to know here. So 109.1 grams. 97.6. Yeah, it's a few 10 grams, a little over 10 grams. There we are, back to our proper readout. So yeah, definitely gain some weight on the button lock. Does it pay off? This one's more nuanced here between these two. The mechanics of them are really about what you're going to value here. And one of that's going to be the fidgetiness or not. The button lock is definitely far as I screw it up on camera, far more fidgety versus the liner lock, while still fidgety, is the standard liner lock. However, where the liner lock version shines is in the detent. Because the front flipper works way better on the liner lock than the button lock. The detent is just stronger. It's just better on the liner lock. Is it a stronger lock? I don't know about that. It's pretty hard to get the pin here to move from a force. So, like, there's a lot of question about whether it can. If you're pounding on it, can it be shook? And I suppose that's probably more likely than the liner lock. It could be shook loose, where it might go out. There might be enough where you could do enough force where that disengages just in that sense, where you have some torsional loads. But as long as the loads are going along around the axis and in line with the blade, you're essentially talking about shearing a pretty thick pin. So yeah, I don't know about stronger, because anything that's going to be, if you've ever seen anyone baton, fold or something like that, where you're holding it down and keeping it, that bending force can bend this right here. You're not going to have the lock fail to the point of where the blade will come at you. The knife will fail, right? It'll usually bend somewhere, it lodges it somewhere right there. You might get a little bit of play because now you have less distance or whatever. You have the same material trying to cover more distance, so you get a little bit more play, but it won't fail. So I don't know about stronger when it comes to it. But the ability, while the fidgetiness is cool, it really is. At this point, I have enough, but there's enough button locks out there that are fidgety that if you're getting this one because you need to have a fidgety knife, there may be better options. It's not the selling point that it used to. So many people are really trying to sell the fidgetiness, which is great, but it's almost oversaturating the market. And I think the Ekko falls victim to that, because the mechanism on the liner lock is just better in the detent. It's snappier. You can hear it. It's so much snappier. The force needed to get it to engage is just that little bit more that makes sure that when you do go past, it always goes. It makes the front flipper far more usable, and much more satisfying in the reverse flick. You know, the thumb flick even. It really does, and you can even slow walk it. The slow walk, because of the light detent, is probably, I would say, just a little bit better on the button lock, where you can more easily slow walk it. But the long front flipper gets in the way. Hits my hand, may not hit everyone. Your mileage may vary. So the mechanics I give to the liner lock, simply because the only advantage the button lock conveys is possibly a slight bit of strength, but there's still a better possibility of it being disengaged through lateral motion of the knife itself rather than a force on the lock. But the detent is better, at least in my two examples here. The detent is so much better on the liner lock than it is the button lock. It's just better. It's more well tuned. It has a slightly higher roll up, disengagement force, which makes it snappier, makes it definitely more deliberate when you do it. And so it really takes the cake when it comes to the mechanics of it. Though, if you are just a fidget fanatic where you're like, yeah, but it's fidgety. Okay, yeah, this one wins. In the fidget factor, the button lock wins. The liner lock can't hold a candle to it. But in most of the other things that make the action of the knife enjoyable, useful, and safe, the liner lock version of this actually is tuned better, at least in my versions that I have here. So I actually give it the action, because in all the other parts that make it a good action, the liner lock version wins. It just can't compete with the inherent fidgetability or fidgetiness, whatever you want to call it, fidgetiness is not as fidgety. It's not as fidgety as the button lock. It just ain't. Okay, it's just not. That's just the way it is. So, being what it is, I still give the nod to the mechanics on the liner lock. Noteworthy points, and this is where it really comes down to, because the noteworthy point is, the button lock is fancier. Titanium, black linen micarta, milled titanium pocket clip. It's more expensive. It has more expensive materials. The time, materials, and everything needed to machine titanium and all this stuff, even in China, just costs more. And so it is more. Now, to be fair, it's only about $25 more. That's about, I think this is 80 and this is 55. So it's only about $25 more. It's not a lot, it's 50%, but overall cost isn't a lot more, which I don't want to talk too much about how on the bottom end of the market, titanium costs $25 more, but on the high end, it costs $100 more. We'll just leave that as a comment right there. But here's the thing. It's all you get is the little bit fancier handle materials and a fancier pocket clip, and knowing that the extra time and it's good materials, and there is some aesthetic benefit to it. But that's all you get. Same steel, ARRPM 9, which is great. Same ball bearing. It arguably, as I just pointed out earlier, a less impressive action for a little more price that makes it fancier. Now it's still good. Let's get this straight. The action is just compared to the action is still good, but given just how much better the detent is on the liner lock, I mean, you can hear it engage more. It's just feels more solid. That is backed up by the feeling you get when you're using it. I'll just keep doing the middle finger on this one. But yeah, it just feels better. And so that's one of the actual noteworthy points on the liner lock. The other thing is that the button lock is flat scaled. There's some letterboxing to it to help give it a little more contoured feeling and not have the sharp edges. And it's definitely every edge is rounded, right? Every edge is chamfered right there and just rounded off. So it's comfortable, but it is nothing comfortable like these contoured scales that are on the regular one. The contoured, this one, micarta, is actually ridiculous. It makes it so much more comfortable and nice in the hand. It is noteworthy in itself that the contouring is impressive in what it does for the knife. This is not uncomfortable. This one is just a lot more comfortable. And I'll even go a little bit further in that it's not the only CJRB that I can say that about. I have had two versions of the CJRB Tala, the carbon fiber Peel-Ply G10 and the regular G10. The carbon fiber Peel-Ply G10 is square. It is just square and flat, not too different from the button lock. Whereas the regular G10 is contoured. And it is so much more comfortable that I'm going to say the same thing about the Tala that I will say about this. The regular, cheaper version is so much more comfortable with the contoured scales that it makes it better in the hand overall by a wide margin. The flat, square ones just are not as comfortable to use. there's a little bit they're a little bit slippier. They don't have the, like on the Tala, they don't have the machining lines and stuff, and so it's a little bit easier on the pocket when you have the flat. But the comfort on with the contour, it just makes it better. It is overall better. And I actually sold my other Tala because I just was never going to use it. This one was just so much better in the hand with all the same steel and everything else that having the fancier handle just wasn't worth it. If anyone knows what foreshadowing is, that was something. Which is going to, that's really goes the noteworthy. It's way more comfortable in hand. And for the intended purpose, which is just a general EDC, you get a little bit of fancy with the Ekko in this configuration, but I don't think it has the same value as, say, like a Pyrite in this configuration, because the regular Pyrite is a button lock. You don't change the action. You are just paying for an upgraded version of the CJRB Pyrite, and that's okay. It's about the same cost differential, just so you know. The difference between the regular CJRB Pyrite and this version, and the difference between these two, is about the same. For the Pyrite, you actually don't lose anything. You get the exact same knife with more impressive stuff. So it's still quite a valuable add-on on the Pyrite. I would say it's less so on the Ekko, which is where I'm going to get to the intended purpose. It's an EDC. They have the same purpose. And when you get arguably better action, I think that the button lock version actually fails a little bit, especially without the contouring. And that's where you get to the cost value part of it. Because the cost value ratio is just better on the regular G10 liner lock. It's with a 50% premium, almost 40 to 50% premium, depending upon where you're buying it and what the prices are. All you get is fidgety and arguably worse action. Fidgety and better material. The better material takes up the bulk of the extra cost, right? I think it's like, it may be $20 or something like that. It takes the bulk of the extra machining and everything for the button lock and all that stuff. Doesn't. It is almost entirely, the Pyrite being an example of how you can tell that it is essentially the same cost as the Pyrite in this. So you know that it costs them about that much to do it, right? They're making some profit off of it, but if it costs them $20 to do it and they're charging $20 or $25, they're making a little bit of money per knife. Great. That's what they're in business for. They're doing a good job. They deserve to make a little bit of profit so they can pay their folks, right? Or, design new stuff or whatever. Really great, especially for a Chinese company. But you get all the same value in this knife with, in my opinion, better action. Again, the fidgety factor is a subjective thing. If it is something you can't live without, you're like, hey, for the same knife, the fidget factor just wins. The button lock is going to win this, right? That's going to be your thing. If you have that priority, the button lock is already going to win because the liner lock by design alone can't compete. So I'm actually going to take that because that's just out now. The action makes this better. The action makes this better and easier to use. It's more of a joy to use. It is more enjoyable to use. The snappy action just really, really, really works. And it's super, super comfortable. The scoring capability right at the very end there. Let's see if I can. All right, so you get lots of room for your hands. So the scoring, using it, slight food prep, it would be a pretty decent fixed blade paring knife design, to be perfectly honest with you. That would be dope. And it would, in a pinch with the ARPM 9, good steel for it. Same thing on there with the 40 to 50% increase, cost to value ratio just easily hands down to the liner lock. Absolutely. And this is where I get the expectation part, where I'm kind of wasn't expecting it to be so much. I did want to try the contoured liner lock. What I wasn't expecting is how much better the action was going to be. It really, really was immediate. I was like, whoa, that's so much better. I can manipulate the front flipper so much better with that stronger detent, because it makes sure that I'm on it and always getting the right pressure before it goes off. Whereas on the button lock, it's actually pretty freaking easy to fail the flipper. When I have the button lock, I don't use the flipper or the front flipper. I don't use it at all. It's always the opening hole or the button. The front flipper is redundantly useless on this. That's no joke. It just really is. It's just basically kind of useless. But it's not. It's actually usable. Even though the opening hole is still the better way, it is still a usable and viable opening method for that. Which means that you're using every part of the knife. And it's cheaper. I didn't expect it to be such a stark difference, but it is. And I actually like, this one, by the way, is a knifecenter.com exclusive. The other ones just are everywhere. So this is when you're going to go, this is the Knife Center exclusive. I have it. I love the Knife Center exclusive. I have several different designs that I like from Artisan Cutlery as well as CJRB that have a similar motif here with this kind of bolster style in the dark. In fact, the Knife Center button lock version of the Pyrite is one I highly recommend. And I when I did the review, I even said, you can get the same knife in just steel scales or G10 or something, and for some it's going to be a better value, but without the benefit of the contouring and the change in the mechanism, the cheaper versions, I thought it was worth it to upgrade, to have the better stuff. The cheaper versions will give you the same knife. They're not a bad value, but I'm actually, if there's one of the versions that I would recommend you get, it's the Pyrite version. Whereas the Ekko, I really don't. I don't think it is unless you really need to have the button lock Ekko to have the fidgety and everything, or if you already have a contoured one, you're like, I really want to try the button lock because I love the knife, then yeah. As your primary one, or if you're looking at, should I go for it? I would tell you no. Unless you have to have the button lock, no. Get the contoured one. It's far more comfortable. The level of comfort that this has in hand, you may or may not like the pocket clip, and that, believe it or not, I believe you can swap them out if you really had to. You could put or get one from CJRB and put the milled clip on there if you wanted to. Maybe not, but it's still pretty. It's not the. I really don't. I didn't have the expectation of it being such a stark difference, but there is, and especially with the action, the deeper carry clip, which is valuable to me. It could be even more lighter weight on the liner lock because, well, on both of them, they're just not milled out. Right? There's no skeletonization. For one that's getting close to 4 ounces and one that's getting close to 3.5 ounces, you probably could have cut, anywhere from 4/10 to 5/10 of an ounce off, maybe only 1/4 of an ounce. You could have pulled a few grams off, without a doubt, by just putting a couple of holes in those liners in a strategic way, without the center of balance on both of them is about the same place, right? It's way back. Could have got it closer to the pivot. I understand this. I love Laconico's designs, and the general design of this knife is fantastic. In fact, I really, 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 one of, not my favorite button locked, not my favorite design with it in the button lock, easily one of my favorite EDCs in the liner lock for this price range. And I really don't have a request, but I really like the liner lock version. It's done very, very well. It's obviously for this market. This high saber grind, the stone wash with the micarta, all a great thing. And this gives us to the design tie. They're the same design. The aesthetics, button lock. Mechanics, narrowly to the liner lock. The noteworthy points, absolutely dominated by the liner lock. The comfort of the contouring, the stonewash that's going to hide usage. The noteworthy points of it being more useful for its intended purpose as a EDC knife, both in reverse if you need to do a lot of envelope stuff or packs. It does it all really good. So that's 1, 2, 3 to the regular one categories, and 1 to the button lock. And with the cost value ratio, which is very often a tiebreaker for me because I am a sucker for a high cost to value ratio. You give me something that's mid-priced with a high value, and I'm a sucker for it because that's like a value. I love it. And with the cost to value ratio being so much in the favor of the liner lock, you have to subjectively place a lot of value on the fidgetiness of the button lock for it to win. Because that's really its big advantage, is a fidgetiness in the one-handed opening and closing. But the liner lock is well known for it. It's been around for a while. It can do it. It's just not as efficient at opening and closing as the button lock. And that's really its big advantage. And I don't really have a request. I like this knife, the ARPM 9, what it's for, the market, its budget, is being outstanding for a budget, really makes it a 5-star knife. And the button lock is a 4.5. So they're both very, may even be a 4 because of the cost value, but it's up there. It's a great knife. But the more recommendable one, the winner of this head-to-head matchup, and my own personal pick for which of the two versions is better, is the liner lock contoured micarta. You can get several different versions of green. The deep carry clip versus... Now, the milled titanium pocket clip isn't bad and it looks nice, but it's still not deep carry. You still have part of the knife popping out, so you see something other than clip. Whereas the contoured, comfy, cheaper, budget version just does it all. It really, really does. And that's kind of where this is going to end, you guys. Having won the shootout here, it's quite a knife. All the regular stuff. The EDC stuff that you need it to do, it does incredibly. I mean, this is a package piercer, a saran wrap slicer, the cardboard carver, and the envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. It does all of that stuff. Will take down packages, cardboard tape, the errant and occasional plastic bubble wrap, as well as so many other things that you can find. You need an EDC one-handed opening and closing folding knife to do. This knife does it very well. In a pinch, it can do some hard work. The ARPM 9 isn't the hardest working steel in the world, but it'll do kitchen stuff. It's going to have relatively decent ability to do some mincing, some chopping, some slicing. Makes a great with the ability to really tuck that in there, the balance point being at your middle finger and tucking it in. Makes a great little sort of kitchen knife grip or paring knife chopping. You don't have the saber grip is fine. You can choke up, as well as sort of the overhand grip, pinch grip as they often call it. But you can definitely do that for slicing and control. definitely getting out. You don't have to. You can choke up, but it really makes you want to do more really really fine tip work. But if you keep your finger back and get your finger on top, you can really do a lot of good, solid, precise draw cuts, tip work, just about anything you could imagine. And it does it all in an extraordinarily, I don't want to say extraordinarily unique, but with a different take on the pintail design, the sort of reverse worn foot, sheep's cliff sort of thing. Yeah, really, really good and highly recommendable. And the winner of the shootout, the loser, is in this particular case just slightly less good, the button lock version. It's more expensive, has less action, and unless you can justify the extra cost and everything with the fidgetiness because you don't use it, or that action is not as satisfying, then you can make a pretty good case. But it really is just for the material, the aesthetics, and the fidgetiness. That's where the button lock shines by design, and it has a satin finish on the blade instead of the stone wash, which gives it a slightly fancier look, in my opinion, given the smooth titanium and black micarta. And that's going to be it, you guys. This is how it is. The liner lock budget version wins the showdown when the other knife is essentially the same but more expensive and has less action. That's how it works here on Dose of Drew. Go ahead, take 5 stars, recommendable, but take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.